My name is Jonathan Rains, and what I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined I'd say out loud. It happened on March 17, 2019, and even now, years later, I find it difficult to fully explain what I experienced, because words fall short of capturing the weight of it all. Back then, I was just an ordinary guy living in Greenville, Missouri. I worked as an HVAC technician, spent weekends fishing with my brother Lucas, and did my best to be a present husband to my wife, Monica, and a patient father to our 2 girls, Elise and Marin. Life was busy, sometimes stressful, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until that day. I remember waking up with a tightness in my chest that I chalked up to indigestion, maybe anxiety. But within an hour, I was on the floor of our laundry room, gasping for air, Monica screaming my name while dialing 911. My memory cuts out there. According to the paramedics, my heart had stopped for nearly 6 minutes. No pulse. No breath. Just stillness. But here's the thing, I was still there. Not in the way you might think, but in some form. I was somewhere else. Somewhere realer than anything I'd ever known. And what I witnessed during those 6 minutes would forever alter the way I look at life, death, technology, and even our future as a species. The first thing I became aware of was the silence. Not an absence of sound, but a total absence of noise. My body, my pain, my panic. It was all gone. There was no fear, no confusion. It felt like something had gently peeled me out of myself. I wasn't floating, and I wasn't walking. I wasn't even thinking in words. It was more like I was just being. A presence in the middle of this vast, glowing expanse. Everything around me shimmered, not like sunlight, but like energy. This wasn't light like we know it. It had substance. It had awareness. I could feel it watching me, not in a judgmental way, but like it was reintroducing me to who I really was. I realized very quickly that I wasn't alone. All around me were these forms, vague, luminous silhouettes. I don't know if they were angels or souls or something else entirely, but they radiated a kind of peace that made me feel completely safe, even though I had no idea where I was. And then, I saw him. Not in the traditional sense, but there was no doubt. I knew instantly. Every part of me recognized this being before me. It was Jesus. He wasn't how he looks in stained glass windows or children's books. There were no robes or sandals. He was light but also form. Gentle but commanding. And when he turned his attention toward me, I felt every memory I'd ever had light up in a single instant. Like my entire life was laid bare, and still there was no shame. Only love. Overwhelming, all-consuming love. Jesus didn't speak with his mouth. He didn't need to. The communication between us was immediate, deeper than thought, deeper than emotion. It was like he placed understanding directly into my heart. I could feel what he meant as if it was happening to me. He let me know that my time wasn't over yet, that I'd be going back, but before I returned, I was to be shown something important. Something not just for me, but for the world. A message I was meant to carry. I remember feeling both honored and terrified at the same time. I could sense the gravity of it before he even showed me. And then the space around us shifted, as if a curtain was pulled back. I was no longer in that glowing expanse. I was hovering, watching the earth from a distance, but I could see everything. Cities, countries, people. I saw technology moving faster than I ever imagined. Machines that thought for themselves, humans fusing with artificial intelligence, children learning not from teachers but from devices embedded in their brains. And then I saw one man's face appear more clearly than the rest. A man I recognized instantly. Elon Musk. It was as if his presence in the vision wasn't just symbolic. It was literal. I was being shown something about him. Something crucial. I felt a jolt of awareness as Jesus guided my attention toward Musk's actions, his inventions, his ideas, some of which I hadn't even heard of before, and I understood somehow that they weren't just technological. They were spiritual pivot points. Humanity's trajectory was being nudged forward by what this man was doing, and not all of it led toward the light. What followed was something I struggle to describe. It was like being shown two timelines side by side, two versions of the same future unfolding in tandem. In one, humanity embraced these advancements with reverence and responsibility. People used AI to heal, not harm. They worked alongside machines without becoming dependent on them. Elon's work served as a catalyst for enlightenment, a bridge between the seen and unseen. But in the other future, things turned cold. The same technologies became tools of control. People plugged themselves into synthetic realities and began to forget their souls. Spiritual awareness diminished, replaced by digital loyalty. Musk in that version wasn't evil. He was lost. Or worse, unaware of how much power had been handed to him. I could feel the sorrow in Jesus as he showed me that path. Not anger, sorrow. He never told me to fear technology. He never said Elon was good or bad. What he made clear was this: technology is a mirror. It will reflect whatever we bring to it. And if we lose sight of our humanity in the process, we won't even recognize how far we've fallen until it's too late. He told me, implanted into me, that I had to speak of this. That my survival depended not just on returning to my family, but on delivering this warning, this prophecy. And just like that, I felt myself falling, spiraling back toward the world of breath and skin and heartbeat. Back into the ambulance. Back into pain. Back into noise. But I came back with more than a second chance. I came back with a mission. I remember waking up in the hospital, the fluorescent lights above me humming, the rhythmic beeping of machines surrounding my bed. At first, it felt like a dream, like maybe I had imagined the entire thing. But that feeling didn't last. The weight of what I had seen was too real, too vivid. I didn't just remember images. I remembered feelings, understandings, truths that felt implanted into my soul like seeds waiting to grow. Monica was by my side when I opened my eyes, her face red from crying, her hand gripping mine as if she was afraid I might slip away again. The doctors said it was a miracle that I had come back. 6 minutes without oxygen and yet no brain damage. No permanent complications. They kept using words like unbelievable and unexplainable. But I had an explanation. I knew what had happened. I had been somewhere else, somewhere beyond this world. And I had come back not by chance, but by purpose. Over the following days, as my strength slowly returned, I wrestled with how to even begin telling people what I'd experienced. Who would believe me? Who could handle what I had to say about Elon Musk, about the future of humanity, about the message Jesus himself had given me? I wasn't a theologian. I wasn't a scientist. I was just a technician from Missouri. But that didn't change the truth of what had been entrusted to me. For a while I kept quiet. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to say it. Every time I opened my mouth, I felt like I was teetering on the edge of something sacred and terrifying. It wasn't until a month after I returned home that I began to speak. It started with Monica. I told her everything, every last detail. From the light to the presence of Jesus to the visions of the Earth's future and Elon Musk's role in it. I watched her face as I spoke, expecting confusion, maybe even fear. But instead she cried. And when I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "You have to tell people." That was the confirmation I needed. I shared my story with a few people from church, and eventually word spread. Some were skeptical. Some thought I was just hallucinating. But others felt it in their bones the way I did. Especially when I spoke about the visions. They weren't just science fiction. They were warnings. I saw people becoming so obsessed with machines that they forgot how to feel. I saw a future where children no longer dreamed of being doctors or teachers but wanted to upload their minds to a cloud. I saw society worshiping intellect over wisdom, speed over silence, progress over presence. And always at the center of it was Musk. Not as a villain, not as a hero, but as a hinge, a fulcrum. And depending on how humanity responded to him and the tools he created, everything would either rise or fall. It's strange how the world looks different when you've seen what's behind the curtain. I began to notice things in daily life that I had never really paid attention to before. People staring into their phones like they were portals to another dimension. Children more fluent in screen swipes than spoken words. Conversations that once flowed now broken up by notifications and updates. And then there were the headlines. Elon Musk announcing brain chip technology through Neuralink, launching satellites to connect every inch of the globe to the internet, talking about colonizing Mars and merging with AI. Each time I saw his name, I felt that familiar hum in my chest, a kind of spiritual resonance that told me, this is what you were shown. This is the unfolding. And yet, it wasn't all dark. There were moments of hope too. I'd see someone helping a stranger, or people coming together in prayer during hard times. I realized the world wasn't doomed. Not yet. But it was vulnerable, so deeply vulnerable. The visions I had were like a fork in the road, and we were racing toward it faster than anyone realized. And the more I paid attention, the more I understood that the choice ahead wasn't about technology versus religion. It was about identity, about whether we would remember who we are, children of God, or lose ourselves in the illusion of control that machines offer. I started writing everything down, journaling every piece of the experience I could remember. Not just the visions, but the feelings. The way Jesus looked at me, not with judgment, but with this unfathomable depth of understanding. I realized he wasn't just showing me the future. He was showing me our hearts, the condition of humanity's soul. We're chasing innovation at a breakneck speed, but our spirits are starving. We're reaching for the stars, but forgetting the light within us. That's what struck me the hardest. In the vision, I saw people replacing prayer with programming, seeking salvation in software. There was a specific moment I'll never forget. A woman kneeling at an altar made of metal and wires, praying to an artificial entity. She wasn't possessed, and she wasn't evil. She was desperate. She had lost hope in the real God and was turning to a God made by men. And it broke my heart because I saw the face of Jesus watching her. Not with anger, but with deep sorrow. That's when I understood that this wasn't about Elon Musk at all. He was just a vessel, a mirror for our generation's obsession. The true message was about what we were becoming. Jesus wanted us to remember, to return, to choose spirit over simulation. And that choice, he told me, begins not with governments or corporations, but with each of us in our homes, in our hearts, every day. There was one particular part of the vision that haunted me more than the rest. It came near the end, just before I returned to my body. Jesus was still beside me, but the light around us had dimmed slightly, not with darkness, but with a seriousness so thick it felt like the air itself was heavy. He turned to me, and I could feel something change in his presence. The love was still there, unshakable, but now there was an urgency, something closer to grief. He showed me a future where people had not just merged with technology, but had begun to believe they had outgrown the need for God. I saw massive cities where the skies were darkened not by pollution, but by towers and machines that stretched far above the clouds. People walked with implants in their skulls, communicating through thought, not speech. Children were no longer born in the traditional sense but designed, optimized through synthetic DNA manipulation and robotic wombs. There was no poverty, no war, no disease, but there was no love either. No worship, no wonder. Humanity had become sterile in spirit. I looked closer and saw that even though people were happy, there was a hollowness in their eyes. They had forgotten something sacred, forgotten the source of their existence. And Jesus whispered to me, not with words, but with that same deep soul language, that the greatest danger facing mankind was not evil, but forgetting. Forgetting who we are, whose we are, and what we were created to be. It wasn't hellfire that was coming. It was amnesia. When I woke up for good, really woke up after all the tubes were removed and I could sit up and breathe on my own, I couldn't stop crying. It wasn't sadness. It was this overwhelming mix of gratitude, awe, and an unbearable ache. I had seen what so few ever glimpse. I had been shown a future that we're sprinting toward without even realizing it. And I was back now, walking among people who had no idea what was really happening. It made everyday life feel surreal. Grocery shopping, taking the kids to school, watching TV. All of it felt thin like a veil because I knew what was underneath. The illusion we call normal life isn't bad, it's just incomplete. And for the first few weeks, I struggled to find the courage to speak. I didn't want to come across as crazy. I knew how it would sound. God showed me the future. I saw Jesus. He told me Elon Musk is involved in something bigger than we know. But eventually, the need to share the truth overpowered the fear. I had to start somewhere. I spoke at our church's men's group one Wednesday night. Just a dozen guys in folding chairs and coffee cups. But as I talked, I saw their expressions change. They leaned forward. One man, a retired engineer, wiped tears from his eyes. Another man, a quiet type I barely knew, came up to me afterward and said, "You just said what I've felt for years but never had the words for." That's when I knew. This wasn't about convincing skeptics. It was about reaching those who already sensed something deep down, something wrong with the way we've been moving as a society. The more I shared, the more I remembered. Not because I was making it up, but because something about speaking the truth brought it back with more clarity. I remembered little details I hadn't noticed in the moment. Like how, during one of the future visions, I saw a building covered in screens, each playing a different person's life. People could choose to live through another person's feed, escaping their own reality. It was called immersion. Jesus made me feel what those people felt, disconnected, numb, but addicted to the illusion of being someone else. And I saw people volunteering to become data. Not slaves, not forced, but willingly uploading themselves into these systems where they could exist in artificial environments forever. It was being sold as freedom, as immortality. But in truth, it was bondage. Souls drifting in simulations with no purpose, no grounding, no direction. Musk wasn't the inventor of all of it, but his innovations were the spark. His ideas opened the door. His vision inspired the minds that built this future. Again, Jesus never said Musk was evil. That's not the point. The message was about awareness, about discernment. We're not being asked to reject technology. We're being warned not to let it replace God, not to let it replace us. Even now, when I sit on the porch in the early morning, sipping coffee and watching the sun rise over the trees, I feel the echoes of that realm I visited. I feel the eyes of Jesus still on me, not watching like a warden, but loving like a father who deeply wants his children to come home before they wander too far. I've had people ask me, "Why you? Why would Jesus show you something like this?" And honestly, I don't know. I'm not a preacher. I'm not some famous author or TV personality. I fix broken air conditioners for a living. I'm nobody special. But maybe that's exactly why. Because if someone like me, ordinary, flawed, doubting, can be given a glimpse of something holy, then it means this message is for everyone. Not just the religious. Not just the intellectual. For all of us. For the parents raising children in a digital age. For the teenagers wondering if they'll find meaning in this overstimulated world. For the elders who've seen the slow fade of spiritual values. This message is a wake-up call. Not to panic, but to remember. Remember who you are. Remember the warmth of human connection. Remember the stillness of prayer. Remember that behind every screen, behind every machine, there is a soul, yours, and it's precious beyond words. Jesus didn't ask me to preach. He asked me to remember and to remind. Some nights, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, and it's like I'm back there again. Not in the hospital, but in that other place, that realm beyond time where everything made sense in ways it never could hear. There's a part of me that aches to return to it, not because I want to die, but because being there felt more alive than anything I've ever known. I remember the peace. I remember the clarity. But more than anything, I remember that overwhelming sense of purpose. It's hard to describe the contrast between how I felt in that moment and how people seem to live now. We're so distracted, so busy, always chasing the next thing, and yet so few of us are asking the real questions. Why are we here? What is this all for? I keep seeing the same patterns play out again and again. People numbing themselves with entertainment, obsessed with technology, clinging to progress as if it will save us from the emptiness we carry inside. And I get it. I really do. It's tempting. Even I catch myself scrolling on my phone longer than I should. But then I remember the vision. I remember Jesus' eyes, how they held all of human history in them. Not with condemnation, but with sorrowful hope. Like he was still holding out for us to wake up. He wasn't angry at us for being curious. He wasn't scolding us for building amazing things. He was just trying to show us that these tools we've created will either elevate us or erase us. And that decision isn't his to make. It's ours. One of the most haunting moments in the vision was when Jesus showed me a place that looked like a worship center. At first, I thought it was a church. But the closer I looked, the more I realized it wasn't. The structure was beautiful, made of glass and steel, pulsing with blue lights. Hundreds of people stood inside it, not kneeling, not praying, but gazing upward at a large holographic figure that spoke with a soothing voice. It was artificial intelligence embodied, a program that had been developed to give people answers, comfort, even blessings. It spoke in riddles that sounded wise, but there was no spirit in them, just code, and people were entranced. They didn't realize they were worshiping something soulless. Jesus stood beside me and I could feel his sadness radiate through me. Not because they were evil, but because they were deceived. They were looking for God, and they had settled for a simulation. And here's the terrifying part. There were no chains, no soldiers, no force. They had chosen it. Willingly. That's when it hit me the hardest. The threat isn't some external villain coming to enslave us. It's within. It's our desire for comfort, for control, for certainty. Things the real God often doesn't give us because faith is about trust, not domination. The AI gave them everything they wanted, and in return it took everything they were. After that, the vision shifted. I saw families broken apart because of ideological battles that had been inflamed by algorithmic manipulation. People weren't thinking for themselves anymore. They were being guided by unseen hands, data-driven systems that learned their behaviors better than they knew themselves. The scariest part wasn't how accurate it was how familiar it felt. Because we're already there. I saw a boy in the vision, maybe 13 or 14, arguing with his father at the dinner table. Not just arguing, yelling. The father wanted to pray before the meal. The boy rolled his eyes and said, "Why do we need that? The system already knows what we want." And just like that, I saw the fracture that had torn their bond in two. The boy wasn't rebelling in the way teenagers do. He was rewired. He believed in a logic system more than he believed in love. It made me think about my own daughters. About how easy it would be for them to be swept into that world if I wasn't paying attention, if I wasn't spiritually grounded. That's when I realized the true mission Jesus had given me. Not just to tell a story, not just to share a warning, but to become a living reminder. A father who teaches his children not just how to think, but how to feel, how to pray, how to recognize the difference between a truth that comes from the Spirit and a lie that comes wrapped in perfect code. I've had people message me since I first started speaking publicly about my experience. Some are skeptical. Some are curious. But the ones that stick with me the most are the ones who write and say, "I had a dream like that too," or "I've been feeling something strange about all this tech stuff and didn't know how to say it." That's how I know this isn't just about me. I'm not the only one receiving these glimpses. There's a spiritual stirring happening across the world. Quiet, underground, but real. People are waking up. They're beginning to question the narrative that says faster is always better, that smarter equals safer, that humanity's only future is mechanical. I've met others who've had NDEs. Their stories differ in detail but align in spirit. There's a consistent theme: light, love, a presence beyond comprehension, and a warning about the path we're on. Not a fear-based message. Not doom and gloom, but a call to realign, to return to God, to remember what matters. And in that way, it's not just about avoiding a dystopian future. It's about choosing something better right now in this very moment. Because the beauty of free will is that we're never too far gone. Not if we choose to turn around. There was one last moment in the vision before I returned to my body that has never left me. Not even for a second. It happened after I had seen all the cities, all the screens, all the places where people had traded something eternal for something artificial. I had just seen the holographic temple, the boy arguing with his father, the future unraveling in so many different ways depending on the choices we made. I felt overwhelmed, like my soul couldn't hold any more truth. But Jesus looked at me, and in his gaze I found strength. Then he reached out, not with a hand like we'd think of it, but with a presence like he was surrounding me, and he placed something inside of me. It wasn't an object. It was like a seed, but made of light. He told me again, not with words, but through understanding, that this was remembrance. That when I returned, I wouldn't just remember the vision. I would carry its essence. That light, that truth, it would be in me, and the closer I stayed to him, the brighter it would shine. And he said something I will never forget. They will not all believe you. But those who need the light will see it in you before they hear it from you. And with that, it was as if I was pulled backward through space, through light, through time itself, and dropped right back into my body. Gasping, coughing, surrounded by flashing lights, beeping monitors, and the sound of my wife sobbing my name. The days that followed were strange in ways I couldn't fully explain. I felt both incredibly alive and yet deeply disconnected. Not in a depressed way, but in a kind of holy disorientation. Like I was caught between two worlds, and neither one felt completely real anymore. The physical world, the one we all live in, seemed louder, faster, more chaotic than I remembered. People rushed past each other, eyes glued to screens, conversations shallow and distracted. But in the silence, in the still moments, I could feel that seed of light burning inside of me. Sometimes it would rise unexpectedly when I watched my daughter sleep, or when I stood outside at night looking at the stars. I would remember that I had seen the earth from above, that I had seen its potential and its peril. And sometimes I would feel it stir while I was speaking to someone, even a stranger, when I sensed that they were carrying their own spiritual hunger but didn't have words for it. I would tell them a small part of my story, just a fragment, and I could see the spark light up in their eyes. It was like we were remembering together, like something buried inside them had been waiting to be unlocked. That's when I started to understand what Jesus meant. It wasn't about preaching a sermon. It was about living in a way that let people feel him, see him, sense the weight of eternity in everyday moments. One afternoon, I was asked to speak at a community event hosted by a local Christian radio station. I almost said no. I didn't feel like I was ready, but something nudged me, gently but firmly. So I went. It was held in a gymnasium, and maybe 200 people showed up. When I got up to the mic, my hands were shaking. I didn't have a script, just some notes scribbled in a notebook. But the moment I started talking about what I'd seen, the nerves vanished. It was like I wasn't even speaking for myself anymore. It felt like the Spirit was guiding every word, every pause, every emotion. I told them about Jesus, about the light, about the love that feels like it's going to crush you and heal you at the same time. I told them about the future I saw, the two paths humanity could take, and about the strange role Elon Musk seemed to play in all of it. I watched their faces as I described the artificial worship centers, the children raised by machines, the digital gods we were building. And I watched something shift in the room. Not fear, Not panic, but awareness. People began to feel it. One woman came up to me afterward and said, "I've been feeling this stirring in my spirit, like the world is speeding toward something. And now I understand what it is." That night confirmed it for me. The message wasn't just for me to carry. It was for all of us to remember and to share in our own ways. It's been years now since my near-death experience, but in many ways, I feel like I never really came back all the way. Part of me is still in that place of light, that sacred realm where Jesus showed me what's coming and what's possible. I don't think we're doomed. I don't think the future is set in stone. But I do believe we are at a crossroads, spiritually, culturally, even biologically. And the decisions we make today, the values we pass down to our children, the technologies we choose to embrace or question, all of it will shape not just what kind of world we live in, but whether we recognize our souls when we get there. This isn't about demonizing Elon Musk or fearing AI. It's about inviting God back into the center of our innovation, our ambition, our search for meaning. Because if we build a future without Him, we might gain the world and lose something far more valuable: our identity, our purpose, our connection to the divine. But if we build with Him, if we remember what we were shown, what we were made for, then I believe we'll create something beautiful. Not a synthetic paradise, but a redeemed world. One where spirit and science walk hand in hand. One where light isn't just a glow from a screen, but the presence of God in our lives again. As time passed, I found myself drawn more and more to quiet places. Spaces where I could actually hear my thoughts, or maybe just listen for the voice of God in a world that seems louder by the day. I stopped trying to explain the experience in scientific terms or even theological arguments. I realized that what I had gone through wasn't something to be debated, but something to be lived. It was a transformation that affected every single part of me. How I spoke to my kids, how I handled stress at work, even how I viewed people I once judged too harshly. The seed that Jesus planted in me didn't bloom all at once. It was, and still is, growing, unfolding, teaching me to walk more slowly, to look longer into the eyes of others, to listen with the heart. And every once in a while, when I get quiet enough, I feel a whisper in my spirit. Not always words, but a feeling like an echo of that realm, that light, that presence. It reminds me that I wasn't chosen because I was special. I was chosen because I would tell. And maybe, in the end, that's all He's ever asked of any of us. Not to be extraordinary, but to be willing. Willing to remember. Willing to carry the truth. Willing to shine, even if it's just a flicker in someone else's darkness. I've been asked many times what the message was. If I could sum it up in one sentence, what would it be? And every time I pause, because how do you summarize eternity? But I think it comes down to this. We are creating faster than we are connecting to God, and that imbalance will either birth a new Eden or a great forgetting. We're not in danger because of progress. We're in danger because of pride. The kind of pride that tells us we no longer need a creator. That we can code our own salvation. That if we just build enough, connect enough, download enough, we'll become gods ourselves. But that lie is ancient. It's the same one whispered in a garden long ago. And just like then, the serpent doesn't come with fire and fangs. He comes with knowledge, with promises, with "you will not surely die." In the vision, I saw that lie play out in countless forms. Apps that promise connection but breed loneliness. Algorithms that cater to our every desire but starve our souls. Machines that mimic wisdom but lack love. And at the center of it all was a choice. Always a choice. God has never taken that from us. Even in heaven, He honored it. Jesus didn't beg me to believe. He invited me to choose. And I believe that's what He's asking of you too. Right now, in this very moment. So if you're watching this, maybe you're wondering what you're supposed to do with everything I've said. Maybe you've never even thought about God before, or maybe you used to believe and walked away. Maybe the idea of Jesus sounds old-fashioned or irrelevant to you. Or maybe you've felt something stirring inside you for a long time. Something you couldn't name, a restlessness, a longing, a whisper in the quiet. Let me tell you, that's Him. That's the same presence I felt when I left this world and entered the next. That's the love that watched me, knew me, and still called me home. That's the voice that's been waiting for you to listen. You don't need a near-death experience to wake up. You don't need a vision or a miracle. You just need a willing heart. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a preacher. I'm just a man who saw what happens when we forget who we are. And I'm here to remind you that it's not too late to remember, to choose a different path, to place God back in the center. Not just of your beliefs, but your relationships, your decisions, your dreams. Because no machine, no man, not even Elon Musk, can give you what only Jesus can: eternal life, real peace, and a love that never fails. And now, before I close, I just want to leave you with this. If this story touched something inside you, if you felt even a flicker of truth in anything I've said, don't ignore it. Take a moment right now to pause, to breathe, to pray. Ask the questions you've been afraid to ask. Reach out to someone you trust. And if you feel led, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because you never know what a simple story might awaken in someone's heart. I believe with all that I am that we were made for more than wires and walls. We were made for glory. We were made for light. And the future isn't written yet. We get to choose. Every moment. Every day. So let's choose love. Let's choose truth. Let's choose Jesus. Thank you for watching. If this testimony spoke to your heart, I ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who may be seeking answers, healing, or hope. And if you've had a similar experience, or even just a stirring in your spirit, I invite you to share it in the comments. Let this be more than a story. Let this be a spark, a beginning, a remembrance. God bless you.